It was a misty morning during the Thanh Minh festival in February, in the region of Kim Sun, my though. The dew still clung to the leaves and branches, and the green grass glistened fresh. A few small spiders spun white webs on the tall blades of grass. A soft breeze blew gently, and thin rays of sunlight filtered weakly through the scattered treetops. A white car stopped along the main road near the ferry station. A tall man, about 25 years old, stepped out, his long arms gleaming under the soft morning light. This was Nguyen Thanh Trung, the eldest son of Hoi Dong Kien, a wealthy and influential figure in Kim Sun. Thanh Trung had an imposing figure, tall, with long legs, broad shoulders, and slightly unruly hair tucked under a cream-colored beret. He wore a white shirt, with the sleeves casually rolled up to his elbows, tucked neatly into gray trousers with a front zipper, giving him the air of a film star straight out of the magazines. "Hey, Binam, stay here and wait for me. I'll go burn some incense and be back soon." Binam, sitting in the car, nodded. "Hey, Ka boss, please come back soon. Okay? I heard this place is full of ghosts." Thanh Trung smiled faintly but said nothing. "Ghosts? In broad daylight? And if it's a beautiful ghost girl taking me away, all the better, right?" With a smirk, he carried a bouquet of small, delicate white chrysanthemums and a fragrant bundle of incense placed neatly in a basket. Slowly, he made his way toward the ferry dock. "Ka hi, long time no see." Hee. The boatman, dressed in a simple brown babier outfit with his top buttons undone, wore an old, tattered conical hat, shading half his face. His grin revealed uneven teeth stained from years of tobacco use. A half-smoked cigarette dangled from his hand, made from soft paper. "I was busy last night, so I didn't go back home. Could you take me to Gò Đất?" Here, there was no need for further explanation. The Gò Đất was well known for its eerie legends, and mentioning the name was enough for anyone to understand. The boatman, however, didn't react with surprise. If it had been anyone else, they might have been curious, as the area had been abandoned for years. Occasionally, someone would visit to burn incense for the old graves, but such visitors were few and far between. Thanh Trung, however, was different. Every year, on this very day, he would return to Gò Đất. The land was said to be spiritually potent, and even the locals avoided rowing past it at night. During the day, if they happened to pass by, they rowed as fast as possible, not wanting to encounter anything unclean or, worse, get dragged into the water for no reason. A few months earlier, a man who rode through the area at night was rumored to have been drowned by a ghostly woman. His body was found the next morning, and since then, the fear of Gò Đất had grown even more intense. Upon reaching the shore, Thanh Trung tugged the boat into place and stepped onto the ground. His appearance, neatly combed hair and polished demeanor, felt slightly out of place in the rustic surroundings. He had returned to Vietnam over a year ago after graduating from the Paris School of Commerce and was now working at a major shipyard company in Saigon. Thanh Trung had few close friends, as most of his relationships were purely social. Nowadays, people only care about money, not character, he often thought. His family had once been wealthy landlords, notorious throughout the region. However, uprisings among tenant farmers had prompted his father, Hoi Dong Kien, to shift to rubber plantation ventures with Western business partners. Today, Hoi Dong Kien owned one of the largest rubber plantations in Ben Phuc, employing hundreds of workers. His wealth had grown significantly, even surpassing his former prosperity as a landlord. The phrase, "the tiger descending from the mountains," hardly applied to the family's situation, as they now commanded greater wealth and influence than ever before. With his rising status in Saigon's business circles, Hoi Dong Kien rarely returned to Kim Sun. But since the passing of Thanh Trung's grandmother, his father frequently visited the old house to tend to the family's ancestral shrine. The family's business in Saigon was now managed by his sister Thien Kim and her husband, Min Koi, a man of humble origins from Maido. Despite Min Koi's academic achievements, graduating as the top student in mathematics and securing a government job, his background meant he was often looked down upon by colleagues and struggled to make close friends. Thien Kim, unlike other rural girls, had been pampered from a young age. She left Kim Sun early to study at the prestigious Ao Tim Girls' School in Saigon. With beauty as radiant as a peony, she lived comfortably in a mansion in District 1, with servants attending to her every need. However, her frivolous lifestyle had cost her a passing grade in the Tutai exam. Despite their different backgrounds, Thien Kim and Min Koi fell in love, although Hoi Dong Kien initially disapproved. Fearing Min Koi's humble roots, he relented when Thien Kim insisted on marrying him. Curiously, Min Koi's parents were not invited to the wedding, a stark reminder of the family's strict notions of social class. One day, Tan Trung overheard a conversation between Min Koi and his parents, which further soured his opinion of his brother-in-law. "Tia Ma, why are you here? Go home. I'll visit when I have time." Min Koi spoke anxiously, glancing around as if worried someone might see them. "We just wanted to see you settled with a wife, son," his mother said gently. "There's no need for that. Go home now." Min Koi snapped, his impatience showing. Since the wedding, Min Koi had quit his government job to manage his father-in-law's rubber plantation. Although the couple enjoyed a happy honeymoon, they had never once returned to visit Min Koi's parents. Tan Trung disapproved of his sister's actions, but everyone was now an adult, and since they shared only the same father, their relationship had never been close. He saw little point in interfering in their lives. Late one afternoon, as Tan Trung made his way through the misty riverbank, a hauntingly sweet voice echoed from across the water. A girl was singing, her voice flowing with the rhythm of her oar, forming a melancholy lullaby that perfectly captured the spirit of the river. "Ah, she's here again," the boatman remarked, breaking Tan Trung's trance. "Who's singing, uncle?" Tan Trung asked. "That's my Chow, the lead singer of Ganba Sun, a famous opera troupe from Saigon. You've never heard of her?" "Ka hai." Tan Trung shook his head. Normally, if he had time, he would go dancing or listen to Western piano music. Watching opera held no interest for him, perhaps because his mother had once been an opera singer, a profession burdened by prejudice and hardship. Opera singers, he thought bitterly, cast aside because of their lowly status, unable even to keep their own children. When Tan Trung was 5, his mother, Min Lai, had been forced to abandon him after being humiliated and beaten by his grandmother's servants. Rumors spread that she had either become a concubine to a wealthy man or ended up working in Saigon's brothels. One rainy night, the villagers found her lifeless body floating in the river. Out of pity, the tenant farmers buried her in Gò Đất, wrapping her in a tattered mat. The sorrow of that tragedy still haunted Tan Trung's memories, and each year, he returned to pay respects at her lonely grave, vowing that one day he would relocate her remains to a proper resting place. "One day," he whispered to himself, "when I leave this family, I'll ensure my mother has the honorable burial she deserves." "Ka hai is here." The boatman hurriedly paddled the boat to shore and gave a quick farewell. His face looked a bit tense, his eyes darting around as if checking the surroundings. "Ah!" The boat nosed into the narrow strip of land jutting into the river, and Tan Trung climbed ashore. "Wait for me here, uncle. I'll just go light some incense and be back shortly." "Ka hai." "What's the matter, uncle?" The boatman scratched his head awkwardly. "Ka hai, forgive me, but once you go, could you catch another boat back? This area sees lots of traffic, so it'll be easy to find one." "Why? What's the problem, uncle?" "It's just, I really don't dare stay here alone, Ka hai. You know how this place is." "The Gò Đất." He gave an uneasy laugh, clearly uncomfortable. Seeing that there were indeed other boats moving along the river, Tan Trung pressed his lips together briefly and nodded. "All right, how much do I owe you?" "2 coins, Ka hai." Tan Trung pulled 2 silver coins from his pocket and handed them to the boatman, who snatched them up like he was being chased by ghosts. He immediately paddled away, not looking back. Tan Trung didn't mind. He turned toward the path ahead. The Gò Đất was on a small islet, thickly overgrown with trees and tall reeds that reached as high as a man's head. In the distance, he could smell the sweet fragrance of ripening longans lingering in the air. The cool breeze and morning sunlight felt refreshing, lightening his spirits. Tan Trung brushed aside the dense reeds with his hands and slowly made his way further inland. Suddenly, he heard a soft rustling behind him. Startled, he turned around. But apart from the misty landscape around him, there was no one. Frowning, he muttered to himself, "Could there really be ghosts here, as the rumors say?" However, knowing he had done no evil in his life, Tan Trung pressed forward with confidence. "Caw hi! Caw hi! Who's there?" This time, a low voice called out clearly, followed by a soft chuckle right next to his ear. Startled, Tan Trung froze and glanced over his shoulder. But all he saw was a thick wall of fog. His heart pounded fiercely in his chest. He no longer dared look back. Instead, he lengthened his stride and hurried through the dense reeds, nearly running. Sweat poured down his face, but soon the reeds gave way to an open clearing. Tall coconut trees swayed gently, casting shadows over the glistening water. Wildflowers grew along the path, and small white butterflies danced lazily through the misty air. The sunlight streamed through drops of dew still clinging to the leaves, making them sparkle like diamonds. Regaining his composure, Tan Trung continued onward. In the distance, he saw about 10 earthen graves, overgrown with grass and wild plants. It seemed like no one had visited these graves in a very long time. Perhaps, he thought, they have truly been abandoned here. He made his way toward a grave beneath a longan tree. It had been nearly a year since he last visited his mother's resting place. Setting the basket of flowers and incense at the foot of the grave, he knelt down beside it. "Ma!" he whispered, but then fell silent. Gently, he ran his hand over the earthen grave, his heart heavy with emotion. A mix of sadness, regret, and longing overwhelmed him, feelings too complex to put into words. "When you were alive, I never got to call you Ma even once. And now, it's already been 25 years, hasn't it?" He smiled faintly, though there was no joy in it. "Ma, Ba Noi passed away last March, on a rainy full moon day." He paused for a moment, lost in thought. "I remember, on that rainy day you left too. Isn't that right?" As he spoke, Tan Trung absent-mindedly plucked weeds from around the grave. "I know you must feel lonely. Father still hasn't brought you back home. Maybe it's because grandmother just passed away. But don't worry, Ma. Next month, I'll move out and I'll take you with me." He stopped talking, falling into silence. After a while, the weeds around the grave were all cleared. Tan Trung arranged the small white chrysanthemums on the grave, then stood up and bowed deeply before turning to leave. As he made his way back through the mist, he suddenly saw a figure about 10 meters ahead, a young woman dressed in a white silk audai and pink trousers, with her long black hair tied loosely at the back. She carried an empty basket in her hand, as though she had just finished visiting someone's grave. Her steps were so light that even her footsteps were silent. The wind began to pick up, rustling the leaves and making the reeds sway and whisper. In the distance, a crow cawed, its cry sharp and eerie. The two of them walked through the misty path, one following behind the other. Tan Trung stared at the woman's back with growing unease. There was no one here earlier, and now, out of nowhere, there's a young woman? Cautiously, he kept a safe distance, thinking, what if behind that beautiful figure is a terrifying ghostly face? Suddenly, the woman dropped her basket and bent down to pick it up. Tan Trung stopped in his tracks, feeling as though his feet were weighed down by lead. But when he caught a glimpse of her profile, he gasped. "Da Hung? Is that you?" The woman turned toward him, her face ethereal in the mist. "It's me, Ka Hai," she said with a soft smile. The sight of her smile sent memories rushing through Tan Trung's mind like waves crashing against a rocky shore. He vividly recalled a moment from the previous autumn, a rainy day that marked the beginning of an unforgettable encounter. That day, it rained incessantly, washing away the oppressive heat of August 1940. Golden leaves drifted along with the rainwater, carried by streams into the river. The rain seemed to wash away not only the heat but also the burdens of life itself. Under the eaves of a small pavilion, a group of young men and women from Saigon sheltered from the downpour. They had been imitating the Western trend of camping in the Lam Dong Highlands, a fashionable activity among the city's elites. Accompanied by a photographer, they hoped to take a few scenic photos to show off to their friends. Earlier that morning, they had visited a riding school, returning invigorated and full of energy. "Tan Trung, aren't you eating? What are you doing out there?" A girl called out as she flipped a perfectly grilled piece of meat on the skewer. The table was filled with beautifully arranged food and drinks. Smiling faintly, Tan Trung shrugged on his jacket and stepped away. "I'm full. Just going for a little walk." He wandered through the forest, the tall pine trees standing like sentinels. Sunlight filtered through the branches, casting playful shadows on the forest floor that danced like graceful dancers. For the first time in a long while, Tan Trung felt truly at ease, breathing in the cool, refreshing air. The bustling streets of Saigon were far too crowded and stifling for his liking, and he often missed the peace he had found during his time in France. That place held so many memories, a peaceful and beautiful place. As he strolled through the endless pines of Lam Dong, his heart felt light and free. But then, without warning, a sudden downpour began, drenching everything in its path. Looking around, Tan Trung spotted an old statue covered in moss. He sprinted toward it, seeking shelter from the relentless rain. And that was when he saw her, a girl in a white dress, her long hair flowing, running toward him through the rain. Tan Trung silently cursed himself for being foolish, then followed De Hung's footsteps. Today, she wore an ao dai, making her appear even more graceful and elegant. ***. You're not from around here, are you? I didn't know you before. De Hung shook her head, the loose strands of her hair fluttering against her pale cheeks. "No, I'm not from here." She gave a brief reply and fell silent. Although Tan Trung was usually talkative, in her presence, all his words seemed to disappear. His mind went blank, and all he wanted was to keep looking at her by his side. "Have you gone back home? Or are you still staying here?" "Ah, I have some things to take care of, so I'll be staying a few more days." "Do you have a place to stay?" The moment he asked, he felt slightly awkward. After all, he couldn't invite her to stay at his house. She was a young woman, and it wouldn't be appropriate. "I have a place already, but thank you for asking, Ka Hai." "How did you know I'm Ka Hai?" "Everyone here knows you, Ka Hai. I've been around for a few days, and I've heard a lot about you." De Hung smiled as she spoke, and seeing the deep look in Tan Trung's eyes, she couldn't help but burst out laughing. "Ha ha, I greet you now, but earlier, your boat was right behind mine. The boatman told me that Ka Hai is the son of Hoi Dong Kien, well known around these parts." Tan Trung felt at a loss for words and simply returned her smile. The two of them soon reached the ferry dock. When Tan Trung saw a boat passing by, he raised his hand to call, "Hey, boatman!" The boat changed course and quickly docked. Seeing De Hung hesitate, glancing toward the river as if looking for another boat, Tan Trung instinctively grabbed her wrist but let go just as quickly. "Why don't you come with me? It'll be easier." "Would that be convenient for you?" "Why wouldn't it be? Get on. I'll help you." Tan Trung spoke as he quickly stepped onto the boat, afraid she might change her mind. She followed him slowly, and he took her hand as they both sat down. The boat began to move. By now, the river was no longer shrouded in mist. Water hyacinths floated lazily along the surface, their purple petals patterned with intricate veins resembling peacock feathers. De Hung reached out and dipped her hand into the cool water. Her pale, delicate hands and graceful wrists captivated Tan Trung, and he couldn't take his eyes off her. "Where are you staying? If I want to see you again, how can I find you?" At his question, De Hung smiled faintly. "I'll be leaving this place soon, Ka Hai, but I believe if we are destined, we will meet again." "Ah!" Tan Trung let out a quiet sigh, lowering his gaze. He wondered to himself, does she already have someone she loves? "I really want to know. Did you come here alone, or with your husband?" De Hung blinked, looking surprised. "Husband? I haven't married yet." Tan Trung exhaled, the corners of his mouth lifting slightly. That's good to hear. He didn't know if they had any future together, but at this moment, It felt perfect. Before he knew it, the boat had reached the dock. Time seemed to fly by when they were together. As they parted ways at the junction, Tan Trung suddenly grasped De Hung's hand, startling her into pulling away. "Oh, I'm sorry." He knew then. He had already fallen deeply for her. "Will you come to Saigon sometime?" "I'm not sure yet, Ka Hai." "Why do you ask?" I just want to see you again." De Hung looked at him, her gaze suddenly deep and meaningful. "If we're meant to, we'll meet again." With that, she quickly walked away, her hair dancing lightly in the breeze. Tan Trung stood there, watching her retreating figure, feeling dazed. "If it's meant to be, but not destined," he murmured. "Ka Hai, what did you say?" Tan Trung, now sitting in the car on the way back home, stared out the window and mumbled to himself. Binam, his driver, glanced over curiously. "Nothing, just drive." Binam chuckled. "All right, Ka Hai. By the way, tomorrow night is Boss' death anniversary, and I heard Koba invited a theater troupe. The show starts at 7. Tan Trung frowned, his brows knitting tighter, and he gave Binam a sideways glance. "A theater troupe?" "Yes, from Saigon. I heard it's really famous. The lead actress is stunning." Tan Trung's frown deepened. "Stunning but eerie? What kind of nonsense is that?" "Binam, I meant stunning, like, incredibly beautiful." Tan Trung felt a wave of irritation. Since parting with De Hung at the dock, his head had been throbbing, and now everything seemed to grate on his nerves. "Have you even seen her? Or are you just making things up?" Unfazed by his master's mood, Binam replied casually, "I saw her last Tet. A friend took me to see her show. She performed something called Fu Tuong. Oh my, her singing nearly made my heart stop. Her shows are always packed. If you arrive late, you won't find a seat." Tan Trung ignored Binam's enthusiastic rambling. He had seen many opera singers before. Some were indeed beautiful, but there was always something about them that he disliked, perhaps their heavy makeup. He remembered that his mother had never been like that. Moreover, he didn't enjoy Kai Luong opera. He preferred Western piano music. He also recalled that even his sister Thien Kim disliked theater. Yet, strangely, she had invited a troupe to perform for their grandmother's memorial. Ba Noi hated theater singers when she was alive. Doesn't Thien Kim know that? The car sped down the stone road and soon arrived at the gates of a large house, its doors shut tight. Tan Trung stayed in the car, gazing out. It had been nearly a year since he last visited this house, for his grandmother's funeral. He had left quickly afterward, for this place held few fond memories, mostly ones of pain. He glanced around. The house was surrounded by freshly painted white walls, nearly 4 meters high. His father had renovated the place after returning, raising the walls to protect against thieves and rebellious tenant farmers. Though they no longer farmed rice, the house was filled with valuables, which made Hoi Dongkien restless and anxious. "Hey, Ka Hai's back. Is anyone home? Open the gate." Binam pounded on the gate, and soon it creaked open. Inside was a spacious courtyard paved with red tiles, adorned with large ornamental plants. The household staff bustled out, gathering Tan Trung's luggage and carrying it inside. "Ka Hai, welcome home. Where's my father?" "He's having tea with Hoi Dong Min in the main hall." What's he doing here?" "I don't know, but Koba Nakha came along too." Tan Trung frowned. "They're probably here to talk about marriage arrangements." His father had mentioned the idea to him several times, much to his annoyance. Not wanting to face the guests, Tan Trung veered off toward the side entrance, heading to the back of the house. "Hey, second master, aren't you coming inside for some tea?" "I don't have any reason to drink tea. I don't know those people." "You're talking too much, little five." Inside, there was the sound of laughter from the girls in the kitchen. Little Five scratched his head, muttering, "Ever since going to Saigon to drive, second master has become much more difficult." "Where's fourth?" "Sir, he's up front. When he saw your car earlier, he told me to ask you to wash your hands and face and then meet him up front." Tan Trung heard, but paid no attention. He headed to the back to wash up, changed into a white silk babier outfit, and slipped on his wooden sandals, clacking as he walked up to the main house. The house was decorated with high-quality, precious wood. A long tea table inlaid with mother-of-pearl stood before a smoke-filled altar, looking exquisitely crafted. 2 large round columns held scrolls, inscribed with shiny black Chinese characters. Mr. Min, the councilman, sat across from Mr. Kien, with his daughter, Nak Ha, standing behind him. Nak Ha was about 18, with wavy hair swept back by a diamond-studded clip. Her delicate hands wore smooth pearl earrings. She was dressed in a graceful pink dress, her lips painted dark red, exuding the scent of Western perfume in the air, making Tan Trung's nose tingle slightly. Clearly, Nak Ha was different from the village girls around here. From the moment Tan Trung entered, she had been watching him intently, even with a faint smile on her lips. "Trung, this is Uncle Min." "Yes, greetings, Uncle." Tan Trung gave a small nod. "Hello, Tan Trung." Mr. Min smiled and then tilted his head toward his daughter behind him. "Ah, this is Nak Ha, my youngest daughter. She's 18 and studying in District 1, Saigon. Say hello to Mr. Tan Trung." "Mr. Tan Trung." Nak Ha smiled brightly at him, receiving only a nod in return from Tan Trung. "I heard you've been back in the country for a few years now?" "Yes, I've been back for about a year, Uncle." "Ah, and you're working at a shipyard? Why not return home to help with the family business?" Tan Trung said nothing, merely offering a faint smile. "I've asked him to come back several times, but he hasn't agreed. Well, the children are grown now and I won't force him. Luckily, I have a son-in-law now to help, as there's too much work for me to handle alone." Mr. Min clicked his tongue in regret. But still, a son-in-law is not the same as a blood son. As the conversation turned to business matters, Tan Trung began to zone out. He had never intended to inherit the family's fortune, knowing he was the son of an unrecognized woman. He had overheard his grandmother say as much himself. Even though he was a son, his status was not even equal to that of Thien Kim. A few years ago, his father took a third wife and she bore a son. The boy was now 7 years old and living in Saigon with his mother. "Trung, why don't you take Nak Ha out for a stroll? Let the adults talk." "Yes." Tan Trung responded and quickly left the room. Nak Ha followed him, the two walking outside, one ahead of the other, under the heavy hanging gourds. "Mr. Tan Trung, having studied in the West, you must have seen many new things, right?" Nak Ha had somehow caught up to walk beside him. They soon sat down at a wooden table beneath the gourd trellis. "I was there only to study, so I didn't pay much attention to other things." They sat there for a while, Tan Trung speaking so little that even Nak Ha, a talkative girl, began to find the atmosphere a bit awkward. "Hey, someone bring up a pot of tea for second master." "Yes." Quickly, someone from the kitchen brought tea. Along with the tea were some sweets and cakes. "Please enjoy the tea, second master Mississippi." "Thank you." After the servant left, Nak Ha smiled and said, "I heard that Mr. Tan Trung still doesn't have a girlfriend. It's rare for someone who studied in the West not to have any women pursuing him." Tan Trung calmly replied, "I already have someone I'm interested in." "What?" Nak Ha was startled, her expression briefly betraying her discomfort. Before coming here, she had been confident in her looks and charm, but it seemed this visit would end in disappointment. Although Tan Trung was not the legitimate son, he was still the eldest son of Mr. Kien. Moreover, he had studied abroad and was quite handsome. Upon meeting him, she had been pleased, but it was all in vain. After a bit more time, Nak Ha stood up. "Well, I should go back inside. My father is probably waiting." "All right, I'll walk you." The two of them walked again, one ahead and the other behind, but this time, Nak Ha walked much faster, not waiting for Tan Trung. Inside the house, after a bit more conversation, Mr. Min and Nak Ha left. As soon as they departed, Min Koi and Thien Kim arrived. Seeing his father rise, Tan Trung spoke up. "Father, please don't meddle in my marriage. I don't like that Nak Ha." Mr. Kien frowned at him, Then who do you like? Tan Trung and his father had always clashed like fire and water, and in a few short words they were already arguing. I'll marry the woman I love. With that, he didn't bother to see the dark expression on his father's face, but walked into his room and slammed the door. Oh, Aunt Ba and Uncle Ba are back. Go get the bags, everyone. Outside, the servants bustled to carry the luggage. The clattering of small wooden sandals echoed, but Tan Trung didn't pay attention. He sat in his room, looking out the window. In the backyard, a jackfruit tree had died, its branches bare. Every now and then, dry leaves fluttered down with the wind, falling to the ground. Suddenly, a sharp scream came from the back of the house. Dear listeners, you've just heard the first episode of the ghost story, The Singing Courtesan. We hope you'll be patient and join us for the next episode.